If there's no God, then torture is as good as kindness. You like kindness, I like torture. Nothing transcends us to say one is right or wrong.
Dennis, in your book, Still the Best Hope, you write something very striking near the beginning. You say, quote, "The future will be leftist, Islamist, or American," unquote. Three choices. Let's talk about those, starting with the American part. Your book urges American values on the reader. And how do you define those?
Well, that's very important because the average, even conservative, cannot answer your question. They think they can, and I'm not holier than they. I couldn't either. People will give a whole speech on liberty or whatever their favorite thing is. We should be able to answer questions like that in one sentence. These are the principles, or one paragraph at most. And then you explain it in books. But I can do it in one sentence because it's been done for me. I didn't make this up, but no one taught it to me. And as I write there and as I tell often, it happened exactly as I described, taking the coins out of my pocket one night. I stared at the coins and realized this is the American value system. Liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum. Every American has been told this since they could read. And we don't know it. We don't realize it. It's frustrating. But those are, and no other country has those three. Liberty, in God we trust. Liberty, first of all. Second, without God, there will be no liberty, because if freedom doesn't come from God, then freedom will come from the state, and the state can take it away. God does not take it away. God must be higher than the state. And finally, e pluribus unum, from many one. We don't give a hoot about your race, color, or anything, or ethnicity, or blood. Zero. You want to be an American? You want to affirm these three values? You are as American as a 10th generation from Mayflower American.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me quibble. The term you use, American values, is not an old term. It's not a traditional term. It's not a term the founders would have used. It's a fairly modern term. It's really a 20th century term that came from psychology and sociology. And it used to be, in its origins, it was a liberal word or a left word.
Values?
Yes, because it implied relativity. It implied your values are what you value, period. And my values are what I value. And so the assumption of a certain relativism went hand in hand with the term values. Now, a funny thing has happened to it since then. It has become a right-wing term.
That's correct. But my answer to that would be yes. I'll even take yours. American values are what America values. That's fine with me.
But isn't your contention that they are true in some sense?
Oh, but they're true. There is a leap of faith that an atheist makes, that an agnostic makes, that a Christian makes, that an American makes. There's a leap of faith. If you believe in goodness, that's a leap of faith. Mm-hmm. You believe in democracy, that is a leap of faith. I believe in a God. The God of the founders is my God. This God wants us to be free. This, by the way, was unbelievably original, because religion was not generally associated with freedom. Mm-hmm. Because either the church or religious law were very controlling of you. Mm-hmm. But here come the American, if you will, Judeo-Christians, and they were very Judeo, mm-hmm. very. You couldn't graduate Harvard till 1800 if you didn't know Hebrew. and they said God demands freedom. It's phenomenal.
But it depends, I guess, on what you mean by a leap of faith.
To God.
Well, suppose there is a document that says we hold these truths to be self-evident, mm-hmm. that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. So you've got the Creator in there, but you've also got this claim of self-evident truth, which sounds more affirmative than our values or American values. Do you see a difference in those, or I mean, do you join Jefferson in his
part one's contingent
declaration?
upon is to me contingent upon part two. It's self-evident if there is a God. Nothing is self-evident in terms of values, if I may use that term, as a conservative.
Well, no, you're right about that. There's nothing self-evident in terms of values, I think.
Yes,
You're right, yeah.
of course not. Because if there's no God, then torture is as good as kindness. You like kindness, I like torture. Nothing transcends us to say one is right or wrong.
Well, what about, founders often talked about nature as a source of values, though, as in natural law, natural rights, unalienable rights, the laws of nature, and of nature's God.
Right.
Are those seeming to assert that that's a distinct source of value? I mean, there is God, there's man, but there's also something else, nature.
I know, and it was a term that was much more popular then than today. And I would love to ask any of the founders. I don't care which one they would have been. Put Tom Paine aside; he was a good atheist. But any of the founders, and say, if there is no God, are there still absolutes to be found in the moral realm? And I don't think they would say yes.
Well, I think they would say yes, actually, but they would say yes, but. I mean, the authority that attaches to them and the penalties for disobeying and the rewards for observing them, I think, do depend upon God. But the question is whether God himself is not limited in certain respects, whether can he make...
Okay, well,
these are
yes.
familiar questions.
Oh, they sure are. Well, look, this is what Abraham asked, the first monotheist. Will the judge of all the earth not act justly?
Right.
In Sodom and Gomorrah. And in the final analysis, Abraham decides to stop questioning. And he comes to the conclusion, God knows what he's doing.
Well, you have written, for example, well on the question of Cain and Abel. And when Cain slew Abel, he knew he had done something wrong, even though God had not forbidden murder.
Right,
explicitly
I believe,
at
yes.
that point. So there was a certain natural knowledge of...
I'm very
of
flattered
right and
that you
wrong.
know that I wrote that. That was not written in that book.
No.
But yes, Cain could have said to God, what did I do? Nobody told me this was wrong. But he didn't. He gives this, am I my brother's keeper stuff. I believe that God has created conscience. I don't believe everybody needs a revelation at Sinai to know that murder is wrong.
Right.
Oh, I agree with that. But if there is no God, it's just an opinion. It isn't truly wrong. It's just an opinion. Well, I wouldn't like to be murdered, so maybe it's wrong. But the Germanic tribes in Europe, the Catholic Church had the hardest time, took hundreds and hundreds of years to convert one group, the Germanic tribes. And it was over murder. They said, what do you mean it's wrong? We're strong. The strong do what they want. And if you believe in Darwin, which obviously they didn't know of, but if you believe in Darwin, that makes perfect sense.
But I suppose one should, let me ask the question this way. It's true that there have been, barbaric and savage and recalcitrant peoples who have been cannibals, who have been murderers, and sometimes whole peoples, more often individuals, I suppose. But is there not some sense that one has, whether it comes from God or not, it's natural somehow to man, so that you can have a conscience, even people who've never heard of God?
Yes, I believe that.
Had any revelation?
Yes, yes, but conscience is a non-material term. Therefore, a non-material reality had to put it there. So yes, I agree that you don't have to know God to have a conscience. Absolutely, there were wonderful pagans and barbarians, and there were many awful religious people. But if the conscience is real and something other than subjective opinion, that argues for God's existence.
I think that's right. But there's still, this was the last time I'll come around to this subject, but it seems to me it's interesting and perhaps important. Jefferson, in one of his last letters, writing actually on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Declaration, says, "The mass of mankind has not been born with saddles on their backs, nor a favored few born booted and spurred, ready to ride them legitimately by the grace of God." So in other words, the natural difference between human beings is nothing compared to the difference between any human being and a horse. And for Jefferson, that suggests there is a kind of natural justice, that nature tells you that you should treat a human being like a human being, rather than treating a human being like a brute animal.
Well, then I would only say that the record of humanity is one that the ease with which nature's message is blocked out is overwhelming.
Yes.
Because as I say all the time, I love humans and I have contempt for humanity.
That's a very conservative position, by the way.
I have very conservative positions.
Well, but
I think Thatcher was right. What is it? Facts are conservative.
yes,
That's what I believe.
that's right.
Yeah.
But so are values, according to you.
Yes. Well, no. You could have bad values.
Yeah.
Oh no.
But
The left has values. They believe that equality is more important than liberty.
Right. But American values, at least, which
Yes,
we're talking about,
right.
are good. Now, would you say that liberty is enough without equality? Do conservatives believe in equality?
Not
too?
as a result. We believe that we're born equal because God created us. But no, not of result, that's totalitarian. The starting line, as much as possible, ought to be equal. But again, we have to be honest, the starting line isn't equal even in the totalitarian, well, no, that's not true. They would change the starting line for somebody. For example, I gave a real thought to going into music. It's my first love. And I still conduct orchestras periodically. But I know that I don't have the talent that many others do, natural talent in music. So my starting line, no matter what, is not the same. But I have an ability in speech, and so that another person may not have. And so that's another place where my starting line is ahead of theirs. So nature isn't egalitarian.
Not in that sense, certainly not. And do you think that that we can win, conservatives can win certain kinds of battles like affirmative action without making the case for equality of opportunity in a strong sense?
Well, we have to make that case. I argue against affirmative action, interestingly. I try to take my opponent's arguments and show why they're wrong. And that I find to be sometimes more effective. I believe affirmative action hurts blacks. If I believed it helped blacks, there is something compelling to the historical argument a group has been hurt and let's change the rules for a period of time.
Particularly blacks, yes.
Yes, specifically blacks. But the curse, and it's a curse, to be in a college and to have every student think you may not have gotten in because of your own ability, that is such a terrible burden, a humiliating burden to place on a person. For that alone, I'm opposed to affirmative action on race.
It's destructive of pride.
Totally. And it produces anger, it produces people, a lot of blacks not associating with whites on campuses, going into their own dormitories. It's awful. And I would feel, so I always got this answer. This is the beauty of doing a talk show for 30 years, because you've heard every response. Oh, well, Dennis, what about the sons and daughters of wealthy donors? Didn't they have affirmative action? To which the answer is yes. And if they all had a big sign, son of a wealthy donor, they would be under the same curse that a black student is.
And wouldn't you also make a distinction between being at a public institution and being at a private institution?
Well, private institution
as
could say we only want
donors go?
Bulgarian lesbians.
Right,
That's
right.
a separate issue.
That's right.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.